It's July 24th, 2010, at Boomer's Arcade in Florida, and Billy Mitchell is attempting to break 2 video game world records in a single day. An incredible feat. First, he breaks the Donkey Kong record with a score of 1,062,800. Now it's time to try to best the Donkey Kong Jr. record. But first, he needs to switch out game boards. His close friend Rob Childs is there to help him, and they decide to document the occasion for YouTube.
Donkey Kong record has been broken, taking the Donkey Kong board out of the game, and putting the Donkey Kong Jr. board back in.
Unbeknownst to Billy at the time, this video would spur an online debate 7 years later, ultimately ending in him being stripped of not just his world records, but his credibility and integrity throughout the gaming industry. I might get sued for this video.
How many people have you sued for defamation in the last 5 years?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, 4. 1 in Australia.
But before we get into that, let me introduce you to the star of today's video, Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell is the video game player of the century. Or maybe he's the con man of the century. We're going to discuss his story, and at the end you can let me know in the comments which one you think he is. Billy became recognizable in the 1980s after Life magazine printed an article recognizing world record holders of some of the most popular arcade games. And since then, he has held numerous records, setting high scores in Burger Time, Miss Pac-Man, Centipede, Donkey Kong Jr., and probably most recognizable, Donkey Kong. He was designated one of the most influential gamers of all time by MTV, Video Game Player of the Century by Twin Galaxies, as well as Namco, creators of Pac-Man. Well, maybe, but more on that later. He had an entire documentary made about him, was featured in numerous other video game documentaries, as well as countless magazine articles and news stories documenting his once illustrious gaming career. Billy was considered one of the first ever professionally contracted video game players, and decades after he rose to prominence, he is still one of the most recognizable faces in the video game industry, for better or mostly for worse. At the height of his popularity, he was the King of Kong, the greatest video game player in history.
I'm Billy Mitchell, video game player of the century. I did the world's first perfect score on Pac-Man, 3,333,000.
But today, many refer to him as the King of Con, a fraud, a sham, a litigious piece of... Today, I want to examine some of Billy Mitchell's most debated controversies. And if you haven't heard of this guy before, you're in for a treat. His story is long and there's a million things that we could talk about, but today I'm going to highlight what I find to be the most interesting and entertaining Billy Mitchell stories. We'll do a little intro for those of you unfamiliar with Billy and then dig into the meat of the controversy. Billy's gaming career has been thoroughly analyzed by many experts in the gaming community, perhaps being some of the most studied gameplay in history. And as it turns out, his world records might not be what everyone once thought. This video is a compilation of research done by others. My sources are linked below if you're so inclined to read further about this saga. The sources I listed have done incredibly detailed research, and I highly recommend you check it out. I present here information I found most pertinent and entertaining about the video game villain, Billy Mitchell. With that being said, let's start from the beginning. In the 1980s, arcade games were at the height of their popularity, and records of high scores had just begun to be documented by Twin Galaxies arcade owner Walter Day. Being the first to compile lists of gaming records, Twin Galaxy quickly became the authority in video game records. Billy and Day first met when Billy reached out to Twin Galaxies, inquiring about what the current Donkey Kong record was. Billy learned the current record was held by Steve Sanders, an incredible 1.4 million points. As Twin Galaxies was the authority in gaming world records, it was Day that Life magazine turned to when they decided to write a gaming article featuring some of the best gamers in America. They chose Billy as one to attend the photo shoot since he was the current world record holder in Centipede with 25 million points. Interestingly, if you check out the Twin Galaxies leaderboard today, the top scores are nowhere near 25 million. One forum user suggests maybe this was due to him faking a score, while another user speculates it was due to an illegal trapping technique that allowed players to mine for points after trapping the centipede into a corner with mushrooms. Anyways, while at the shoot, Billy reportedly challenged Sanders, the then Donkey Kong record holder, to a head-to-head match. Billy easily beat Sanders with a score of 874,300, leading Sanders to admit that he lied about his 1.4 million points. Sanders was stripped of his record by Twin Galaxies and it was given to Billy. At least this is what Billy reports. 5 months later, Twin Galaxies was still recognizing a score of 767,000 as the top. What you will soon find out through this video is that gaming industry is fraught with exaggerators, manipulators, and straight-up liars. The Life magazine photo shoot would be the start of Billy and Day's friendship, future partners in crime, some might say. Billy would follow Day around the country as they met with gamers claiming world records, and Billy would challenge gamers in head-to-head matches if he thought they were lying about their scores. Occasionally, he was successful in exposing some of them. He slept on the floor of Twin Galaxies while trying to make gaming a career, traveling the country with Day as they bonded over their shared love of gaming. He and Day were business partners in a couple arcade ventures that didn't pan out, and they developed a deep friendship that would undeniably lead to favoritism in the future. But that's for later. Though they tried hard to make a living off video games, that wasn't really a thing in the 80s. And after their failed arcade businesses, Billy stepped away from gaming in 1985 to take over his family restaurant and hot sauce business. It would be nearly 15 years later when Billy would return to the gaming spotlight. So back in the early 80s, it was discovered Pac-Man had what was known as a kill screen. Kill screens are screens that prevent a player from progressing in a game. Once you reach it, you can go no further. It's the end of the game. There are several retro arcade games with kill screens, including Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. Kill screens can present in different ways depending on the game. In Pac-Man, the kill screen is known as a split screen, as half the screen is still playable and the other half is a bunch of gibberish. Billy and his friends had arrived at this split screen in 1983 and discovered that there were 9 hidden dots you could eat for points on the gibberish side of the screen. By completing all 256 boards, eating every fruit, ghost, and dot, including those on the split screen, one could arrive at a perfect score of 3,333,360 points. Billy knew of this information back in '83, but it wasn't until 1999 when he found out a group of Canadians were close to attaining a perfect score that he decided to attempt it himself. In May of '99, Billy traveled to New Hampshire in his quest to capture the first perfect game at Twin Galaxies' first Fun Spot International Classic Video and Pinball Tournament. There, also in his quest for the perfect game, was Rick Fothergill. Billy and Rick took turns back and forth throughout the weekend on the one Pac-Man machine at the arcade, and when the dust had settled, Rick was the only player to post a new world record: 3,333,270 points, 9 dots short of a perfect game. According to Rick, after the tournament, he and Billy had what became known as a gentleman's agreement, deciding they would wait until the following year's tournament to attempt the perfect score again, giving everyone a fair chance to be the first.
Okay, the tournament ends like 3 days. It was a 3-day tournament the first time.
Yeah.
And then we all make an agreement that we will wait until our next meeting.
You, Chris, and Bill. Yeah.
No, not, well, Chris too. He was like down in Florida, but Neil was there.
Yeah.
Right. That we will wait until our next meeting to go for the perfect score again.
This gentleman's agreement isn't verifiable by anything but word of mouth, so whether it actually happened or not is still up for debate. What we do know is that a few short months later, on July 3rd of 1999, Billy again traveled to Fun Spot Arcade, where he completed the first recognized live perfect Pac-Man game. Following this achievement, Twin Galaxies declared Billy the Player of the Century. Later that year, according to Billy, he was invited by Namco, the creator of Pac-Man, to the Tokyo Game Show. There's a lot of speculation how exactly this invitation came to be, but he was nonetheless in Japan where he met the creator of Pac-Man, Masaya Nakamura. Billy's trip and meeting isn't video documented anywhere, but I'll let Billy explain in his own words what happened. First, when he met Nakamura.
The door opens, and in walks Masaya Nakamura, 4 of his inner circle of marketers and inner circle of programmers. And as we sat there, I said to him, I said, there's not a kid in the world that ever played video games who wouldn't want to be seated in this seat right here, right now. I mean, he's like the godfather of video games. And so I thought, man, I'm here, I can ask any question. All these things we're wondering about, the games and such. And so I said to him, and he's got his inner circle there. And I says, when you get to the last screen, I says, we believe that there's not enough room on the board in the memory for the entire board, and that's why it's garbled. And because there's not enough room, there's not enough dots, that's why the board doesn't advance. And so we figured this, I went through some long explanation, and it went to him from the interpreter, and they went back and forth, Japanese. And the answer came back, they said, Mr. Mitchell, we have no idea. We never thought scores like this possible. And I said, oh, Mr. Mitchell, you know far more about Pac-Man than we know. We have no idea. And he says, Mr. Mitchell, you know far more about Pac-Man than we know. And I says, oh.
About a half a minute. And then when she says to me, she says, Mitchell, you know far more about Pac-Man than we know. We have no idea.
And for 2 hours, I sat there fielding questions from them. They were more fascinated that they were sitting in front of me and they could ask me anything than I was of them. The roles were exactly reversed. But I love the wise guys. I love the guys, oh, you think you know everything. Well, I don't think I know everything, but you think you know more about the game than the guy who made it. Well, yeah, he told me I did. We were in Chicago, and the designer, who I've met for the second time, a different guy, he's there in Chicago. And as we're fielding questions, there's a whole panel of us and him, they asked him a few questions, and he goes, I have no idea, you gotta ask Billy those questions. You know, he said it, again, through a translator.
Throughout many of Billy's interviews retelling this story, it's implied that the makers of Pac-Man were unaware of the split-screen phenomenon.
There was nothing saying congratulations. There was nothing saying the end, game over. Nothing. The designer of Pac-Man, not only did he never think anyone would get to the end, he didn't know where the end was. He didn't know at what point the game would run out of memory. Everything to him is completely baffling. They never saw the split screen until I sent it to them. Masaya Nakamura, who's the godfather.
Which led many gamers to question the validity of this story, because the split-screen phenomenon had been well documented far before this supposed 1999 meeting. News articles referencing the split screen can be found as far back as the early 80s, nearly 20 years prior. So would Namco really not have heard about it before Billy? This personal meeting was just the start of his trip though, as he would later go on to accept a few awards from Namco.
Masaya Nakamura, who's the godfather of video games. He crowned me Video Game Player of the Century for that and all the previous achievements. It doesn't get any higher than that.
Billy is well documented discussing the Player of the Century award he says was bestowed upon him by Nakamura. Pictures prove he was certainly on stage at the Tokyo Gaming Convention, holding a plaque next to Nakamura, but that's about all we can confirm for certain. For such a prestigious award to be reportedly handed out, there's a suspicious lack of news articles supporting Billy's claims. In one of the very few articles that mention the ceremony even happening, he's referred to as receiving the Pac-Man 20th Anniversary Award. No mention of Player of the Century. Further adding to the suspicion is the plaques themselves. The plaque he is seen holding on stage is well documented in The King of Kong, and there's numerous other pictures online. It reads, Dear Billy, as father of Pac-Man, I wish to extend my heartiest congratulations on your amazing feat of becoming the first player ever to achieve a perfect score of 3,333,360 points on the Pac-Man game. The news of your accomplishment, which has spread quickly throughout the world, comes to us at a very opportune time. We are currently preparing to celebrate Pac-Man's 20th birthday on October 10th, 1999. And as part of the celebration, we will be releasing Pac-Man World 20th Anniversary for PlayStation platform in October. Your historical feat will help us remind the world of this special occasion, and will also help bring back memories of yesteryears for many fans of Pac-Man when, as young players, they feverishly challenged every aspect of the game. Most importantly, however, your feat will undoubtedly remind the world once again of the greatness of the game itself. The entire Namco group joins me in congratulating you and thanking you for your invaluable support of Namco's most prominent game, the Pac-Man. Interestingly, no mention of Player of the Century. When questioned during a recent deposition, Billy had this to say.
Mr. Mitchell, has Namco awarded you any award?
Yes.
Okay, and what award is that?
Well, one was Player of the Century. And the other one basically reflected the world's best Pac-Man player. They've given me accolades at different events, such as their arcade in Chicago.
How did that award look, the Player of the Century one?
Was about the size of this notepad. I don't know, what is that, about 10 by 8? And dark, had a Pac-Man, had a message written on it, and signed by the founder, president, CEO, whatever, Masaya Nakamoto.
Was it a plaque?
It was on a piece of wood. I'm not an expert. So was it a plaque? It was on a piece of wood with Pac-Man doing this, like a
thumbs up.
Yeah. I mean, there's pictures of it online.
And where did it say, or what did it say on the front?
Oh, you want me to give it verbatim? I can't give it to you verbatim. It recognized me as a player, my accomplishments, what I had done, my contribution to Pac-Man, first perfect score. I mean, it's online. You can
Did it say Player of the Century?
It said Player of the Century on it.
And you're sure of that?
I'm sure of that.
All right. Do you see this Exhibit K, Mr. Mitchell?
Oh, yeah.
Can you describe to me what this is?
That was on stage, whether it was at 17th or 18th of September. That's Masaya Nakamoto and Namco cheerleaders at the Tokyo Game Show.
Is this the Player of the Century plaque that you're holding there?
I believe it is.
All right. Who else is on stage with you there?
Masaya Nakamoto.
All right. Where did this picture take place?
On stage at the Tokyo Game Show.
In what year?
1999.
All right. You know, there should be a done at the top there. Do you see that there? All right. Now can you click on Exhibit L? Do you see that there?
Yes.
All right. Can you tell me what this is?
This is a plaque I received from them. That's the Pac-Man guy that I talk about. And this is the one that talks about Pac-Man and how it's such a part of the culture, how I achieved the first perfect score.
Is this your Player of the Century plaque?
No, this is a different one.
Is this the one that you were holding in the picture?
No, it's not.
So you were given two different plaques?
2 awards from Namco.
All right.
Just like I said earlier.
And this was one of them, the other one is a Player of the Century?
That's correct.
Do you have any copies of the Player of the Century plaque?
No.
Any pictures of it? Where's that plaque located today?
It would be, I believe it's at the Hall of Fame.
Where's that?
That's in Ottumwa, Iowa.
Is that the International Video Game Hall of Fame?
That is.
Okay. All right. And who did you donate it to?
The International Video Game Hall of Fame.
Was there anyone in particular that you gave the plaque to?
Well, at the time, Brian Cady was there, and Jerry Byram was there.
Okay, so he gave it to Jerry at the Video Game Hall of Fame. Just get the plaque back, and you can shut up all the naysayers about it.
That was all.
And what about Jerry Byram? Did you ask him?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh.
All right. Did you think to ask him?
No.
Why not?
Why would he have pictures of him?
Well, he has the plaque of the International Video Game Hall of Fame. Isn't that right?
Yeah, you asked me about pictures.
Okay. Did you ask him to take a picture of the plaque for you?
No, I didn't.
Could you have done that?
Could I have?
Yeah.
Of course I could have.
Is there a reason that you didn't?
Yes, because you asked me if I had some. I don't have them. You didn't ask me if I could go out and research them.
You don't need to respond.
Okay.
Further digging did uncover the existence of 2 plaques, but only after a court order. Of course, it goes without saying how odd this revelation is. You can easily Google Billy's well-known plaque and find numerous pictures of it. He's taken it to many events, shown it off in his documentary. His Player of the Century Award, presented by Twin Galaxies, is easily found, but the existence of his most talked about plaque, the one given to him by the creator of Pac-Man, well, there's only one grainy photo available, and it only exists due to a court order. Billy talks about this award being the highlight of his entire career, but he doesn't keep track of or even have a single clear picture of the plaque he once called the highest honor in video game history. Odd, to say the least. A closer look at the plaque reveals that Pac-Man and the lines on the letter don't match up to known pictures of the plaque, and the pedestals the plaque sits on appears different, leading some to believe the plaques are fake. So Billy claimed the first perfect Pac-Man record under questionable behavior, breaking a gentleman's agreement. Then he flew to Japan, where maybe he embellished a few stories. We don't know any of this for certain. What we can say is Billy re-entered the gaming world with a bang. But let's continue on with our Billy saga and delve into his Donkey Kong records. There are 3 records that are greatly studied and debated. The first, known as the King of Kong score of 1,047,200 points, of which an entire documentary was made. Then there is the mortgage broker score of 1,050,200, performed at the Florida Mortgage Brokers Association's annual meeting. And finally, we have the Boomer score of 1,062,800, where Robert Childs would document the now infamous board swap video. But more on that later. Let's start with the record that made Billy a household name. The King of Kong documents underdog Steve Wiebe's attempt to break Billy's Donkey Kong record. Playing on a machine out of his garage, Wiebe sets a new Donkey Kong record. Wiebe lived on the West Coast, opposite side of the country from current record holder Billy in Twin Galaxies. So to verify the score, he sends in a tape of the record-setting run. Twin Galaxies, now very aware of the possibility of cheating, investigates Wiebe's reported record, sending referees to his house to analyze his machine. And the rules are clear. In order for a Donkey Kong record to be valid, it had to be played on an original, unmodified Donkey Kong machine. During Twin Galaxies' investigation of Wiebe's score, they discovered that Roy Schelt, a longtime adversary of Billy, had provided Wiebe with the circuit board used to break Billy's world record.
I saw this box that has Roy Schilt's return address on it. So they looked over and they said, Roy Schilt, why is Roy Schilt's name on there?
Roy Schilt is the type of gamer that would like nothing more than to see Twin Galaxies get an egg on its face.
Because of worry Schilt might have tampered with the board in an attempt to take down Billy's record, as well as a sticky substance reportedly found on the circuit board, Twin Galaxies refused to acknowledge Wiebe's taped record.
The fact that the right gummy substance on the right chip out of all of these chips in the right spot on the right board. I mean, I have to say there's a conspiracy here.
Any board that's worked on could have a problem.
Down, but not out, Wiebe decided to travel across the country to attempt a live record at Fun Spot, this time in front of Twin Galaxy refs, many of which were close friends of Billy's. Billy was invited to attend, but unexplainably refused. In the movie, we see Wiebe attempting to break the record, And in the middle of his run, one of Billy's henchmen sets up a TV in the middle of the arcade and plays a tape for the crowd of what was reported to be the first million-point Donkey Kong run performed by Billy. All while Billy sat at home directing the events from his phone. Despite this pressure, Weeby again breaks the world record with a score of 985,600, reaching the kill screen where Mario dies out of nowhere. So, Weeby had just traveled thousands of miles after his first videotape performance was denied, played at a live venue with Twin Galaxy refs adjudicating it, and in the middle of the run, they have the audacity to take away Steve's glory by playing a videotape for Billy. And despite all this, Steve is still able to beat the world record. Pretty incredible. In Billy's tape, he scores 1,047,200, but he's known to only claim world records at live venues. So Weeby's score still stands, right? Right? Although Billy claims this videotape score of 1,047,200, better known as the King of Kong score, was for entertainment purposes.
You told me earlier that you never intended for your 1047-200 score to be submitted as a world record. Is that correct?
Not initially, no.
Did that change?
The facts are, it is seen being entered into the Twin Galaxies website as the new world record and was published 9 months later in the Guinness Book of World Records. Billy claims to do a lot of things for entertainment purposes, and I don't know about you, but don't you think Billy actually showing up to play in the documentary about his Donkey Kong records would have been more entertaining, if entertaining was Billy's goal? Billy says this world record tape was recorded at his friend Robert Child's arcade, but the only evidence he provides of this are witness testimonies from himself and Robert Childs, Billy's longtime friend. Later in the movie, Twin Galaxy hosts a tournament in Billy's hometown, which Weeby travels across the country to attend. Okay, so Fun Spot is in New Hampshire, Billy lives in Florida. I guess it's reasonable he didn't travel to Fun Spot, but this tournament is in his hometown. He would have to attend, right? Our hero, Weeby, wasn't able to beat Billy's record, but he does get a bit of redemption at the end of the movie when it's revealed he was able to officially break Billy's record. Similar to the Pac-Man record, the way Billy achieved his Donkey Kong record left a bad taste in many people's mouths. He isn't shown playing Donkey Kong a single time in what is supposed to be an entire documentary made about how he is the King of Kong. With Weeby now the Donkey Kong record holder, it would be just a few short months later Billy would look to regain his title. Billy was invited to the 2007 Florida Association of Mortgage Brokers annual meeting as a guest of honor. The event that year was 80s themed, and Billy decided this would be a good opportunity to take back his world record. After the King of Kong, there was some speculation of the legitimacy of taped world records, how easy the scores could be altered or gameplay manipulated. So when Billy decided to take back his title as the King of Kong, he wanted there to be no question as to the authenticity of his gameplay. He sent the circuit board to Nintendo's headquarters to be authenticated. An engineer verified it as an authentic, unaltered Donkey Kong circuit board, which he then sent to the mortgage broker convention. When it arrived to the convention, it was installed by GameStop manager Josh Ryan, under the supervision of a security guard, all while being videotaped by a third party. Here's Billy's recount of the story.
It's a guy who Walter contacted. He was a manager of GameStop. He came over, received the board that had been sent there. He put it inside the machine, and that camcorder was used by the lady Sheila to videotape him putting it in.
Were you there?
I watched.
You watched the whole thing?
Yes.
So explain to me what you saw.
I saw him take the board, and it was pretty self-explanatory that this connects here, there, because it only connects one way. He connected everything. He locked up the cabinet. He put a padlock on it so that it could not be opened.
When you say he connected everything, what exactly do you mean?
He hooked up the board to all the connectors, excuse me, and the
converter board got connected in order to draw the signal that would be recorded. And then he locked the cabinet.
So he installed the converter board?
Yeah, well, the converter board was already there. It just had to be plugged in.
The converter board was already where?
Inside the cabinet.
Okay. And you saw him?
I saw him do it.
You saw him install the converter board?
I saw him do everything.
Okay. How did he install the converter board?
He plugged the stuff in where it goes.
Does the converter board get plugged directly into the Donkey Kong machine?
Well, how else? I don't understand the question.
Well, I'm asking you. Like, what did he do to plug in the converter board?
If you know.
No, I mean,
But you saw him do it, right?
Yeah, I don't know how it works.
Yeah, well, what else did you see him do?
I saw him take many different wires that were hanging all over the place and find the places where they should go. Because, for example, 3-prong only goes into 3-prong. It doesn't go into 6-prong. So it was kind of self-explanatory. I'd say he struggled for about 30 seconds, and then it all came together.
So he struggled for 30 seconds to install the converter board?
No. I'd say he struggled for about 30 seconds to install the entire game.
It took 30 seconds for him to install the PCB with the converter board?
I would say he looked at it about 30 seconds. He struggled looking at it, and then he installed it all like that.
How long did it take him to install it?
A minute.
Just 1 minute?
Not much more.
So it was 1 minute between the time the arcade cabinet was opened, PCB and converter board were placed in, cabinet closed, locked up.
No.
How long?
I don't know. Those are your words.
Well, I'm asking you.
Cabinet opened, everybody looking, opening the box that came from Nintendo. Okay, oh, there's a security guard there too, because they held the equipment. Okay, and he looked at it, and Sheila talked with the camera, said what was going on, and spoke of things as they happened. I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 1 minute? I don't know.
Less than 5 minutes though, right?
Yeah, and then he padlocked it.
What tools did he have with him?
Okay, so when you're attempting a world record, there are 2 ways to record yourself playing. One is a simple video camera over the shoulder, but in Billy Mitchell's case, he used a direct feed recording where the machine is hooked up directly to a recording device. The gameplay is sent directly from the machine to the recording device. And when you set up a Donkey Kong direct feed to a TV, you will have to turn the TV onto its left side so that it's displayed properly. The only problem with this story is that Josh Ryan testified he never hooked up any recording equipment and that there was no way for the gameplay coming out of the machine to have been recorded. The process to hook up the direct feed recording is quite labor intensive and requires several tools and splicing of wires.
What tools did he have with him?
He had nothing.
No tools?
No, not that I recall.
Not even a screwdriver?
No, not that I recall.
Hammer?
Not that I recall.
Measuring tape?
Not that I recall.
Scissors?
Do you recall him having scissors with him?
He had no tools, no scissors.
What about a wire stripper?
Nope.
What about electrical tape?
Nope.
Definitely not, right?
Sorry. Oh, definitely.
Electrical tape, definitely not. Any wire nuts?
Nope.
Did he have to splice into any part of the machine to install the converter board?
Nope. Not that I recall.
And if he did, you'd know, right? Because you witnessed it with your eyeballs?
I would have been amazed. That's how I would have known.
My question is, you would have known if he spliced into the PCB itself to install the converter board.
I have no idea what that even means.
You didn't see him expose any of the plastic sheathing on the wires on the motherboard, did you? The PCB board?
Is that no? I can't.
That's no. Sorry.
You never saw him twist any wires together, did you?
I never saw him do that, no.
But you saw the whole thing happen?
I saw the whole thing happen.
Who instructed, and that's Josh Ryan, right?
Yes.
Oh, you know his name now?
But I guess we just assume Billy was mistaken on how his record-breaking score was taped. Adjudicating the event was Billy's longtime friend Todd Rogers, as well as Rogers' girlfriend. Rogers has been outed as lying about several video game records and stripped of all of his records. An entire scandal all by itself, but that's for a different story. Leave a comment if you're interested in hearing Rogers' story. So Rogers, a known cheater, is there to adjudicate the score of his good friend Billy. Sounds unbiased to me. Billy has a circuit board that's been certified by Nintendo as official, installed by a GameStop manager, and there are Twin Galaxy refs there officiating the event. Sounds pretty solid. Billy breaks the world record yet again with an impressive 1,050,000 score. There to back up his story is Sheila Kinnery, a mortgage broker who invited Billy to attend the event, Richard Mallion, an attendee who appears to have been arrested for fraud several times, and throwing a wrench in his eyewitness testimony defense, Valerie Saunders, who would have no reason to lie, recalls this record taking about 15 minutes to complete.
How long did it take you to achieve that score?
It's a little over 3 hours.
3 hours to achieve a million score?
Yeah.
Million point score?
Normally, close to 3 hours. If you drag it out, it's 3. If you go faster, it's less.
What's the fastest time you could score a million points?
I don't know.
What about for yourself? What's the fastest time you've ever scored a million points?
I don't know.
Can you give me an estimate of the fastest time you've scored a million points?
More than 2.5 hours? Under 3?
Definitely not an hour though, right?
An hour?
Yeah.
No.
That'd be impossible?
Yeah.
There's just no way it would only take 15 minutes to complete, so I guess maybe Valerie was wrong. Todd Rogers also verifies the score happening on an original Nintendo Donkey Kong machine. Robert Childs confirms this as well, and says it's the same machine used to perform his King of Kong record. Well, we know that a Nintendo engineer certified the circuit board as original and unmodified, but that was just the board. What about everything else? Let's ask the King of Kong himself what exactly entails an unmodified Donkey Kong machine.
Blue cabinet or a red cabinet?
It was, gee, good question. Yeah. I think it was blue, but that's a good question.
What about the color of the buttons? What color are they?
I don't remember anything being different than the usual blue, blue, red.
And then what about the color of the joystick?
If it wasn't black, I wouldn't have played it.
Why is that?
Because the other joysticks are not real joysticks. They're not Donkey Kong joysticks.
They're not four-way joysticks?
They're not authentic joysticks.
They'd be something else?
Yeah, they'd be something either not from Nintendo or something I'm not familiar with playing.
And then if it wasn't either a black or white joystick, would that make it a non-authentic machine?
No. It's a four-way joystick.
Mm-hmm.
The ball on top is almost always black.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely have I seen anything else. If it wasn't black, then I wouldn't have played it.
And why wouldn't you play it?
Because it would be a different feel. When I say that when I express it confidently, it's just that I know I would have ran away from it if it was something different.
If I showed you a photo of the machine with a purple joystick, would that be the machine that you played on?
No.
Definitely not. What about a green joystick? Would that be the machine you played on?
I remember it being black.
Okay. What if it was a red joystick? Would that be the machine you played on?
I remember it being black.
But what if it was a red joystick?
I played the machine.
Yeah, would you have played the machine then, if it was a red joystick?
No. I would have made him change it to black.
Did that happen?
It was black.
I'm going to now show you Exhibit G, a picture of Mr. Mitchell with Todd Rogers at the Florida Association of Mortgage Brokers show. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Is that you?
That's me.
Is that Todd Rogers?
That's Todd.
Who's the other gentleman there?
Don't know.
Okay. Is that the Donkey Kong arcade cabinet that you played on?
It looks like it's it.
I'm now going to show you Exhibit H, another picture of Mr. Mitchell at the Florida Association of Mortgage Brokers.
Hmm?
Do you see that there?
Yep.
Is that still the same cabinet that you played on?
That doesn't look like the joystick, though.
Was the joystick changed?
Not by me. Maybe in the photo.
So are you contending that photo was altered?
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm saying I don't remember the joystick being red. That's all.
Isn't it true, Mr. Mitchell, that you played that machine on an 8-way joystick?
No.
In probably one of the most hilarious gotcha moments I've ever seen, Billy was unaware of the existence of this photo until it was sprung upon him during a deposition. What I don't understand is how you can make the big hoopla of certifying the circuit board, but not make sure you have an original joystick, one of the easiest parts of the machine to identify as authentic or not. Not to mention, this is, according to Childs, the same machine he performed his King of Kong score on, so it was modified. Childs and Rogers' testimony is either a blatant lie or they don't know what an unmodified machine looks like. Either way, this should disqualify his records, right? More on that later. Let's continue with the last record we have at hand, Billy's Boomer score, which would ultimately lead to his downfall. We are back at Boomer's Arcade. It's July 24th, 2010, and Billy Mitchell is attempting to break 2 video game world records in a single day. First, he breaks the Donkey Kong record with a score of 1,062,800, which is adjudicated, again, by good friend Todd Rogers, with Robert Child present. Joe Tortorella, manager of Boomers, as well as Matt Fergal, the tech that delivered the machine to Boomers, testifies as being present the moment the high score was attained. Celebrations are had and everyone is excited about the new world record. Billy decides to go for a second record the same day, this time on Donkey Kong Jr. But first he needs to switch out game boards. Robert Childs is there to help him and they decide to document the occasion for YouTube.
Kong record has been broken, taking the Donkey Kong board out of the game, and putting the Donkey Kong Jr. board back in.
To the casual observer, nothing would seem off about this video. One board swap for another, okay. But something strange is going on. Let's take a closer look.
Taking the Donkey Kong board out of the game, and putting the Donkey Kong Jr. board back in.
Robert says he's removing a Donkey Kong board and replacing it with a Junior board. But when overlaid with a known Donkey Kong Junior board, you can see they are the same. He is taking out and putting back in the same board. The differences would never be spotted by a casual observer, but they were noticed by experts in the gaming field, and it spurred the creation of a dispute thread on Twin Galaxy's website that would go on for a long time. Unfortunately, I can't go into the specifics of this thread because Twin Galaxies has taken it down. Despite what seems like Billy's lifelong mission to scrub the entire internet of any naysayers, there is still luckily plenty of information regarding his gameplay floating around the internet. So a thread is open discussing what's supposed to be videotape proof of a board swap that clearly didn't happen. Later, Childs would testify the video was just for YouTube, stating, "I'd put the Donkey Kong board in the car earlier, therefore I just acted as if I was swapping out 2 different boards." But his excuses weren't enough to stop the speculation surrounding the validity of Billy's score. If all this evidence wasn't enough to make you question Billy's authenticity, the best is yet to come, when Jeremy Young posts his shocking revelations in a thread titled, "Billy Mitchell's direct feed recordings are M.A.M.E generated." So first things first, what is M.A.M.E? M.A.M.E stands for Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator. It's an emulator that, as the name would suggest, emulates the inner workings of arcade machines, essentially taking data on how real arcade machines work, and it allows you to play it on a computer. You may have seen arcade games where you can play a bunch of different retro games on one machine. Those are M.A.M.E. Records set using M.A.M.E have stricter rules for getting verified, because users are able to manipulate the settings, unlike on original arcade machines. You can pause the game, add lives, reset levels, and then stitch it all together to make it a single run. Basically, you can change the game in any way imaginable. M.A.M.E scores are typically separated from real arcade machine achieved records because although it emulates how real arcade games are played, there are still obvious differences and potential advantages. To understand the most important difference for this story, we need to understand a bit about how the display works in both the arcade and M.A.M.E games. This is the simplified version based on my understanding of others' research, including Tanner Falcon's comprehensive analysis and case study of Donkey Kong, M.A.M.E, and Arcade, which I've linked below, and I encourage you to check it out on your own. First off, Donkey Kong has 4 levels, and they are known as barrels, conveyors, elevators, and rivets. And between each level, there is a transition screen. The transition screen and how they are displayed are what we're going to be focusing on. The way the Donkey Kong arcade machine displays the picture on its screen is via a bar that scans from left to right. As graphics are loaded into the VRAM, all the internal stuff that you don't see, the bar scans them, then displays them onto the monitor, which is what the player sees. The left side shows the scanning happening internally, and the right side shows us what is displayed on the screen for the player to see. Notice here as the bar is scanning across, although the picture on the left shows more graphics, the player can only see what's on the right, partial graphics because the bar has yet to scan the rest of the picture. If we stop this for just a moment, we can see on the left side of the screen, it has 4 complete girders, but the bar has only scanned part of the screen, so it's displayed on the right side as a partial drawing. Again, this is what the player would see. As the bar makes its way across the screen, again, the rest of the VRAM or internal graphics are scanned and it's displayed to the player. It's important to understand this happens in a millisecond. Here we have it happening in real time on an original machine. And if we rewind and go frame by frame, we can see it matches up with our example. The bar has only scanned part of the graphics, so it's displayed to the player as partial girders, which is shown on the right. You will notice the break down the middle of the girders that lines up to where the bar is at. And as we continue the clip, the bar will finish scanning the graphics and the rest of it will show on the player's screen. The way M.A.M.E loads a screen is quite different. Simply said, it's a snapshot of the screen and it loads all the graphics at once, unlike the scanning done by the original Donkey Kong hardware. On the top left we see the original Donkey Kong scanning bar, and on the bottom left is M.A.M.E with its snapshot. The right side is, again, what the player actually sees on the monitor. And if we stop it to show the girders we've already discussed, we can see on the bottom, due to M.A.M.E snapshot, there are only 3 girders displayed to the player. The differences in display between arcade and M.A.M.E output are referred to as M.A.M.E signatures. And when the transition screens are compared, you can clearly see the differences. We can look at the pie transitions and see the M.A.M.E signatures there as well. When stopped at the first frame of the transition, you will see a partially drawn ladder, as well as only one ladder at the top left of the arcade screen. In M.A.M.E, the ladder is fully drawn, and there are 4 additional ladders displayed that don't show up until the next frame on the arcade. In the elevator transition, we see a partially drawn ladder again on the arcade side, and on the M.A.M.E side, we see a fully drawn ladder and 4 additional ladders. And finally, in the rivet transition, we see on M.A.M.E the entire left side is drawn on, while the ladders are only shown on the right side of the arcade screen. In addition to the transition screens, the rivet level also has a ramp. After you beat the level and the girders underneath Donkey Kong fall into a pile, the arcade version of the pile forms a ramp for 1 frame, but in M.A.M.E they fall immediately to a neat pile. The way the transition screens are displayed and the orientation on which a direct feed will appear on a TV are the same for every original unmodified Donkey Kong arcade machine. So we see there is clear differences in M.A.M.E and arcade transitions. Let's compare these transitions with Billy's videotaped records. First, let's look at the pie transitions. You can see the extra ladders and no sign of a partial ladder for either of his high scores. Then comparing elevator transitions, I think at this point you can see the comparison yourself. And taking a look at the rivet transition screen. as well as the rivet ramp. Finally, let's take a look at the barrel transition, where we can spot the distinctive 3-girder M.A.M.E signature in Billy's play. And again, 3 girders. But you might have noticed something is slightly off on Billy's screen that isn't on the arcade or M.A.M.E screens. It's this extra piece of girder that would soon become known as the girder finger. This girder finger can be seen on later versions of M.A.M E, but the version available to Billy at the time of his King of Kong record did not have this extra finger.
I couldn't believe it when it was sent to me. It's here. It's real. It's off of the M.A.M.E website. M.A.M.E 1.16 to 1.22 was developed and became available. Don't fall down in the back. Became available 3 years after I submitted the score. For the first time, you could play it 3 years later. Period. End of paragraph.
To explain this girder finger, we have to get technical again and talk about refresh rates. Refresh rates are how many times the beam scans the screen each second. Donkey Kong's refresh rate is 60.60606 Hz. Billy would want you to believe that it's 60 Hz, but he is citing the refresh rate for the monitor, not the circuit board. In addition, this specifically says 60 Hz plus or minus 5 Hz, so 60.6 would be well within this parameter. M.A.M.E's original refresh rate was set to 60 Hz. By adjusting this refresh rate to exactly match Donkey Kong's at 60.6, the girder finger would appear. Later versions of M.A.M.E would update to run at 60.6 Hz so that it would match Donkey Kong's rate exactly, which is why the girder finger appears there naturally. Billy's rebuttal is to maintain Donkey Kong's refresh rate was 60 and that, quote, someone in 2004 would have to see into the future and know that the M.A.M.E creators would change the refresh rate of their game, and that the reason M.A.M.E creators changed the refresh rate in future versions was to simply make the game run more smoothly. But this argument implies that someone would want to change the refresh rate to mimic M.A.M.E, so really it doesn't even make sense to me. Maybe someone can explain it to me in the comments. I've linked with my sources an electrical engineer who interprets the video game board schematics and explains how original unmodified Donkey Kong runs at 60.6 Hz if you wish to investigate it further. But I'm not going to go further into it here, just to say that it was well known that 60.6 was the refresh rate long before these M.A.M.E findings surfaced. Okay, so let's recap what we've discussed so far regarding Billy's gameplay. We know his first record was a videotape submission that he says was never meant to be a submission, yet it ended up in the Guinness Book of World Records. It has M.A.M.E signatures throughout, no transition screen throughout the entire gameplay appears to be from an arcade, and his witness to this score is his good friend, Robert Childs. His second score was done with an illegal joystick clearly installed, which is also reported to be the same machine used for his first record. This alone should disqualify both records. Not to mention the score was adjudicated by a known cheater. The claims a GameStop manager hooked up the direct feed for his recording has been proven false, and the videotape of this record also has M.A.M.E signatures throughout. And his third Donkey Kong record, which was done at Boomers, has a few more witnesses, but was again adjudicated by his friend and known cheater Todd Rogers, and has a suspicious YouTube video attached to it. I think now is a good time to introduce Dwayne Richards. Richards was a one-time friend of Billy's and Twin Galaxy ref who has been accusing Billy of cheating for years. He owned the website fuckbillymitchell.com and created 2 documentaries about Billy, The King of Con and The Perfect Fraud Man. Richard had been trying to expose Billy as a cheater for a while, and in 2009 he sent a few damning emails saying he had a master plan to take down Billy and that he was learning how to modify boards. Worst of all, he had asked a friend of Billy's to help him fake a M.A.M.E score.
Oh, I kept this really quiet, but I'm sure other people are going to come out after I do and tell them what the story is. Way back when, in like, I don't know, 2009, I'm going to say.
Before you met me?
Contacted me. and asked me to help him doctor a tape of M.A.M.E. Donkey Kong to make it look like we got the high score to put egg on Twin Galaxy's face.
Oh my God. That's a
He asked me to
bombshell.
do that for him. And I am sure I'm not his only guy to go to.
So they're
with
trying
that
to
being
embarrass
said,
Billy. They're the ones.
According to the new owner of Twin Galaxies, Jace Hall, Richards was the one who sent him the tapes of Billy's world records. And because of all this, Billy asserted the tapes were altered by Richard to take him down. But if you think about this for only 1 second, you can probably figure out why this assertion is ludicrous. First, there are several copies of the tapes, all from different people that show the exact same footage. Richard would have to get every single tape and alter them all the exact same way, never missing a single transition. For his King of Kong score alone, that would mean he would have to have had altered 610 frames, and then done it again for every tape in existence. Then, after altering every tape in existence, never missing a single transition, he would have to wait 12 years for someone to figure out the difference in the transitions that happened in just a millisecond. Sounds real plausible. Then there's the press conference Billy Mitchell did after his Boomers score. This conference was literally a week after his Boomers performance. Let's take a look at the video.
4 hours, and it is the absolute reason why champions were built. Everybody who was a champion who came from South Florida came because of that place.
So apparently Richards got a hold of this tape, which was presumably in Billy's possession the entire time, and within a single week altered every single transition. If all that wasn't enough to convince you how outlandish this accusation was, a long-lost video from MTV was discovered, where Twin Galaxies ref is showing off Billy's world record run.
This is Bill Mitchell, the world's greatest Donkey Kong player, at 1,044,000. Screen 116, and his score is now going to be 1,047,200 when the bonus is added. And at this point, you're going to see the kill screen in Donkey Kong. The game has an absolute conclusion.
This video is from 2006, and if you recall, it was 2009 when Richards was enlisting the help to make a fake M.A.M.E. run. Taking a note from Billy's defense package, Richards altering this tape from 2006 would be impossible because time travel isn't real. When it was clear blaming Richard wasn't going to work out in Billy's favor, he and a few others set out to prove the transition screens could be produced by an unmodified Donkey Kong machine, all while still claiming the tapes were altered by Richard. One member of Team Billy was David Race, the current record holder for fastest completion of a perfect Pac-Man game. Race originally thought there was a witch hunt going on to frame Billy, and he tried his best to help clear his name, but was only able to come to the conclusion that the evidence was inconclusive. Carlos Pinheiro, an electrical engineer, also worked hard to prove Billy's innocence. Unfortunately for Billy, after their extensive testing, they both came to the same conclusion, that Billy's gameplay was not done on an original unmodified Donkey Kong arcade machine.
Jive, but he's just a con man. He's a con man. You can keep that in there.
Thinking, it's like, am I being manipulated here? I said, is this what is known as gaslighting? And I remember, oh, we don't have it. It was sent to Twin Galaxies. It seems like anytime you asked a question, there was always an answer that put the evidence farther out of reach, where nobody could ever have access to it. And I'm thinking, I printed this out August, highlighted some stuff, gaslighting. I said, this is the claim. And all this time, I let everything go and say, all right, benefit of the doubt, we'll finally see the evidence. And it wasn't happening. And no matter, and I wasn't going to say, all right, I think this was maybe, or maybe you could produce it. But when I found out that these early boards were actually using, their core emulation was using an earlier version of M.A.M.E, that didn't help the matter either. So what do you do? That's like, so I would definitely say that what is seen on those tapes is not from arcade. And then regardless of how they try.
Team Billy was able to reproduce the skirter finger one time after replacing several parts of the machine. What, of course, stands out the most to me is that after all this extensive testing spanning months, they were only able to reproduce the girder finger one time. Then they reportedly continued replacing parts on the machine, and they weren't able to reproduce the girder finger again. With this evidence, they were able to pay a computer scientist to make a statement basically saying that if the hardware in the machine was aged just right, and all the components used to record the direct feed also had aging, it was possible this combined could make Billy's recordings look like M.A.M.E. Even though after months of testing they were only able to force a girder finger one time. And I guess we're supposed to just ignore all the other M.A.M.E signatures as well. There are a few other things that could have exonerated Billy, which are unsurprisingly missing from his videos. M.A.M.E had incorrect sound effects that would be blatantly obvious to anyone familiar with the original arcade. Billy's direct feed setup had the capability of recording sound, but for some reason they chose not to set it up. The loading screen for Donkey Kong Arcade also has what is known as a rug pattern. M.A.M.E's is just a series of zeros, and none of Billy's tapes show the loading screen. Then of course there are the numerous additional tapes Billy claims to have that are nowhere to be found. With all this information and after months of third-party testing, Twin Galaxies stripped Billy Mitchell of all of his titles, stating that, based on the complete body of evidence presented in the official dispute thread, Twin Galaxies' administrative staff have unanimously decided to remove all of Billy Mitchell's scores as well as ban him from participating in our competitive leaderboards. But the Billy saga wouldn't end there, as Billy would go on to sue numerous people and entities in an attempt to regain his titles and dignity. Billy was no stranger to frivolous lawsuits, as he had already sued Cartoon Network in 2015. Cartoon Network had aired an episode of the regular show that depicted a giant head named GBF from outer space who had similarities to Billy.
Giant bearded face.
You're not mad at us for breaking your world record.
It's the highest score in the whole universe. 1,279,001. Now who holds that record again? Me!
Billy sued for damages caused by this cartoon, but the judge ruled that GBF was an exaggerated version and, unlike the plaintiff, literally explodes when he loses his title. Therefore, the depiction was protected under the First Amendment. Now that Twin Galaxies had stripped him of his titles, Guinness Book of World Records followed suit, but Billy threatened litigation, and shortly after, Guinness would release this statement.
Billy Mitchell has made various appearances in the Guinness World Records books since the 1980s, but in 2018 some questions were raised about the technical aspects of his gameplay, and we therefore took the decision to disqualify his records. Mitchell then appealed that decision, and we subsequently reopened his case and re-examined the evidence. This involved reviewing both the existing evidence and newly sourced eyewitness testimony, plus some new expert gameplay analyses and hardware verification. In the end, we found that there just wasn't sufficient evidence to support the disqualification across the board. In cases such as this, where there is debate, we would typically defer to the original contemporaneous adjudication, and this is the case here. So the result is that the records management team has decided to reverse the decisions made and reinstate all of Mr. Mitchell's records for Pac-Man and Donkey Kong.
Let's be real. Is the Donkey Kong high score worth an expensive, drawn-out court battle to them? Probably not. But Twin Galaxies refused to reinstate Billy's score, and he filed lawsuits against Twin Galaxies, Jeremy Young, who made the first accusations his tapes were M.A.M.E generated, and YouTuber Apollo Legend. Twin Galaxies and Billy settled out of court. The details of the settlement aren't public, but he was reinstated in their historical database, but still banned from submitting new high scores.
How many people have you sued for defamation in the last
What?
5 years? People or entities?
Well,
Recently, Billy just took them back to court claiming they had broken their non-disclosure agreement. In his lawsuit against Apollo Legend, he became the owner of several tapes Apollo had made of him, which he now copyright claims anytime someone tries to post them again online. YouTuber Carl Jobst, who has a bunch of entertaining videos on this saga, is also currently being sued for mentioning Billy in his videos. They are set to go to court soon. Billy has weaponized the legal system against anyone who questions his records, but at this point, no amount of lawsuits in the world will restore his reputation in the gaming community, or any community for that matter. To put one last nail in the coffin, we have to talk about the Music City Multicon.
Dubbed the video game player of the century was in Lebanon this weekend. At Music City Multicon, Billy Mitchell set out to beat every level of Pac-Man and also walk away with a perfect score. News Channel 5's Hannah.
Have you performed the perfect Pac-Man score recently?
I've done it a number of times.
When was the most recent time?
Ooh. Hold on. September.
Where did that happen?
London.
Is that September of 2022?
September 2022.
Anything before that?
A number of times. Glitch Bar. Fun Spot.
What about the Music City Multicon?
No.
You didn't perform a perfect Pac-Man game there?
No.
Do you remember that performance?
This all happened in 2022, long after he was stripped of his titles and exposed as a cheat. So, Billy knew this wasn't a perfect Pac-Man score, yet he still managed to convince an entire crowd and news station that it was. It's not surprising that the average onlooker would be fooled, but he even managed to convince podcasters of the gaming channel The Broken Token he had completed the perfect game.
This comes into play is Billy played the in public, and so what did he play? And I don't want to oversell it, but I want to sell it properly.
Okay, that's
so
fair.
I'm just going to be safe here because it's been a little bit. I'm a little removed from it.
Mm-hmm.
So he publicly played the first perfect Pac-Man on the advanced chipset. Okay, and then to try to answer the question,
did you tell the crowd that that was a perfect Pac-Man score?
No, I told ahead of time that it would not be a perfect score.
This is how brazen Billy is. A bold-faced lie in front of a huge crowd and a news station, while he already had been accused of lying about his video game accomplishments. This kind of stuff is what makes him one of the most entertaining villains and why I find this whole story just so hilarious, but also a little sad, admittedly. I could go on in this Billy saga, but I think I'll end it here. Leave a comment if you want Billy Part 2, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
World Record Headquarters can I help you.
Are you associated with the International Video Game Hall of Fame at all?
I support them however I can.
And you're a director, aren't you?
You're wrong. I am not a director.
Have you ever been a director?
No. I've said that from the beginning all the way through. Nobody speaks for me but me. You're doing a really good job here. trick.
Answer the question.
Walter coordinated the performance?
I would say there's just a tremendous amount of confusion.